The celestial compact had watched many species rise. Some burned brightly and faded within a few millennia, while others thrived under their guidance, bending to the will of the greater cosmic order. The moment humanity applied for entry, the ruling council barely gave them a second glance. Another warlike oxygen-breathing species from an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy. Dangerous, perhaps, but predictable. They were wrong. Humanity didn't just rise. They conquered. For 10,000 years, the compact had governed the galaxy with an unshakable hierarchy. The Vernari, the oldest and most revered species, claimed the highest seats of power, their wisdom earned over 1 billion years of evolution. Beneath them, the Telrax, the Geranth, and the Ossith performed their designated roles: military strength, industrial innovation, and scientific discovery. The balance had been perfect. Then came the humans. When Earth sent its first diplomatics envoy, they were met with polite dismissal. Their homeworld was young, their technology only a fraction of what the compact had mastered. Their history was riddled with war and self-inflicted suffering. It was decided. Humanity would be given a small, inconsequential sector, a few barren systems at the edge of known space. A gesture of inclusion, nothing more. They would be kept occupied, given trade routes to manage, minor economic privileges, just enough to keep them satisfied. Humanity did not stay satisfied. Captain Elias Voss stood before the towering figure of Kyle Vor, the Geranth ambassador, a diplomat whose species had negotiated peace between warring empires for centuries. Voss, in his crisp Terran diplomatic uniform, was calm but watchful, his eyes scanning every flicker of movement in the alien's 4 iridescent eyes. "Your people," Vor had declared with practiced finality, "are fortunate. The compact has been most generous." Voss held his expression steady. He had seen the reports. The compact regulated humanity's growth, keeping them confined to a handful of resource-starved worlds, forcing them into unfavorable trade agreements, denying them access to the most powerful technologies. Containment, disguised as diplomacy. Still, humanity adapted. Where other species took centuries to master compact technology, humans reverse-engineered it in decades. When denied access to stable trade routes, they forged alliances with the forgotten, the desperate, the disenfranchised. Where others adhered to tradition, humans innovated, twisted rules, and exploited loopholes. And when the First War came, it was not humanity who started it. The Kathir Dominion, a minor but ambitious empire within the compact, miscalculated. They saw humanity's rapid expansion into their trade lanes as a threat. A preemptive strike, a display of power, was meant to remind the humans of their place. They expected a swift surrender. Instead, they found themselves in the fight of their existence. Terran warships, smaller and seemingly primitive, moved unpredictably in battle, using tactics no compact fleet had ever encountered. Human AIs coordinated entire battlefronts in real time, adapting faster than any organic mind could process. Human soldiers did not break under fire. They regrouped, retaliated, and struck with terrifying precision. The war lasted 10 years. By the end, the Kathir Dominion was no more. The species that had once thrived for hundreds of millennia was shattered, its fleets in ruin, its people begging for mercy. And humanity? They did not claim victory. They claimed territory. The compact watched, stunned as the humans did what no species had ever done before. They took the conquered lands and turned them into something greater. They rebuilt the fallen Kathir worlds, integrated survivors into Terran society, and absorbed the Dominion's resources, technology, and infrastructure into their own growing empire. It was not conquest in the traditional sense. It was worse. Humanity had evolved past war. They assimilated. The ruling species of the compact gathered in secret, their concern palpable. Never before had a species grown so rapidly in both power and influence. Humanity was no longer just another race among the stars. They were a rising force, an anomaly in the carefully maintained balance of the galaxy. And anomalies were dangerous. The humans must be contained, Calvor insisted, his voice sharp as he addressed the gathered council. If we allow them to continue this unchecked expansion, they will own half the galaxy before we realize what has happened. Others disagreed. The humans rebuilt what the Cathir destroyed, an Osith elder countered. They uplifted an entire civilization rather than exterminating it. They could be an asset to us, but fear had taken root. The Compact enacted sanctions, restricted humanity's trade rights, and placed bans on their access to higher-tier technologies. It was meant to stall their progress. It did the opposite. Under pressure, humanity thrived. Where technology was denied, humans created their own innovations. Where trade was restricted, they formed alliances with outcast species. Where diplomacy failed, they found other ways to influence power. And within a single century, humanity had expanded beyond their original borders, claiming entire sectors. Once abandoned or ignored by the Compact, they had not merely survived, they had risen. Dr. Sahana Patel stood in the dimly lit archives of the Compact's historical records, her fingers brushing against holographic texts written long before humanity had even reached the stars. She had spent her life studying the collapse of ancient empires, searching for patterns, understanding the cycles of rise and decay. And as she pieced together the final remnants of civilizations lost to time, a horrifying realization settled over her. They all had the same flaw. They had assumed they would remain in power forever. And now, the Compact was making the same mistake. As Patel studied the most recent territorial maps, the truth was undeniable. What had begun as a single insignificant species dismissed and overlooked now controlled entire regions of space. Their fleets outmatched Compact military assets. Their technology, once decades behind, was now on the verge of surpassing their overseers. Their influence, once mocked, now shaped the future of entire star systems. And in the darkness of space beyond the watchful eyes of the Compact, whispers of a new galactic order had begun to spread. Not an empire, not a rebellion, something far more dangerous, a force that could not be stopped. Humanity. They should have known better. The Compact had contained thousands of civilizations before, species that burned too bright, too fast, civilizations that clawed their way into the stars only to collapse under their own ambition. But humanity wasn't like them. The Cathir Dominion had been a minor power in the Grand Galactic Order, a species known for their aggressive territorialism but limited ambition. The Compact had allowed them to exist because they served a purpose. Expansionists who could be used to keep other rising civilizations in check. When humanity's growing trade network began intersecting with Cathir space, the Compact looked the other way. A minor skirmish, a border dispute. This was how ambitious species were reined in. But the Cathir did not stop at a skirmish. It began with the destruction of Colony 96, an unassuming Terran outpost at the edge of the Perseus. No warning, no declaration of war. Just a silent massacre, entire settlements erased in a single night, their communication relays burned out by neutron bursts. The footage that remained, smuggled out by a surviving maintenance drone, shook humanity to its core. There were no prisoners, no survivors, only the remains of entire cities turned to blackened wastelands under Cathir orbital bombardment. And that was their first mistake, because humanity did not forget. When the first reports reached the United Terran Federation, the council chambers fell silent. It lasted only 13 seconds. Then came the response. Humanity did not send diplomats. They did not issue ultimatums. They moved. Cathir listening posts along the border vanished overnight, their deep space satellites transmitting only brief bursts of static before going silent. Outposts were wiped from existence, their defenders, never even glimpsing the incoming threat. And then, when the Cathir Grand Fleet finally mobilized, they found the Terran Third Armada waiting for them. By Compact standards, the battle should have been a decisive victory for the Cathir. Their warships were larger, more advanced, field-tested in centuries of conflict. But humanity fought differently. Where Cathir formations relied on predetermined battle doctrines, humans adapted in real time. their fleets controlled by AI-assisted neural interfaces that anticipated enemy movements before they happened. Where other species adhered to structured, formal engagements, humans hacked enemy command relays, jammed sensor networks, and used asymmetrical tactics that no compact force had ever prepared for. By the time the battle ended, the Kathir no longer had a fleet, and the compact finally understood what they had unleashed. Ka'al-Vor had watched countless wars unfold over the centuries. He had seen empires rise and fall, civilizations erased in the cold silence of space. But this was something different. The human fleet did not merely win, they eradicated. The Kathir military presence with surgical precision, their forces pushing deeper into enemy space without hesitation. And then, they stopped. There was no mass extermination, no planetary bombardment. Instead, humanity did something far more terrifying. They offered the Kathir survivors a choice: join them, serve under them, or be left behind to fade into irrelevance. It was not mercy. It was absorption. As the compact convened an emergency session, Dr. Sahana Patel sat alone in her quarters, staring at the unfolding war reports. This was it. She had spent years arguing that humanity was different, that their ability to adapt, innovate, and incorporate alien cultures into their own was unprecedented. But the compact had dismissed her, and now, as she studied the patterns unfolding before her, she knew humanity was not conquering. They were evolving faster than anyone had ever thought possible, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if that was a good thing. With the Kathir dominion reduced to a vassal state, the compact could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity had outgrown their place in the galactic order. They had taken an entire empire, not through conquest but through absorption, and if left unchecked, they would do the same to the rest of the galaxy. The compact had two choices: contain them, or be consumed by them. They chose containment. The Compact Council issued an immediate technological blockade on Terran advancements. Trade restrictions were placed on all human-occupied worlds. Military alliances were severed. It was an act of desperation, the kind used on rising species before they could become true threats. But humanity had already learned. By the time the restrictions were in place, humanity no longer needed compact technology. They had built their own. By the time the blockade was enforced, humanity had already formed its own trade routes. By the time the compact fleets surrounded human borders, the United Terran Federation had already begun developing weapons beyond compact understanding. The compact had expected submission. Instead, humanity thrived under pressure. They adapted. They innovated. They turned every restriction into an advantage. And now, as Ka'al-Vor stared at the updated star charts, he saw something that terrified him to his core. In just 100 years, humanity had gone from an overlooked civilization to controlling a quarter of the known galaxy, and they weren't stopping. The compact had survived for millennia by enforcing stability, by ensuring no single species rose too fast, too strong. Every empire that had dared to challenge their order had been crushed under the weight of collective galactic power. But humanity had rewritten the rules. They were not just another species. They were something new, something the compact had never prepared for. And now the compact faced a choice: adapt or be left behind. The blockade had failed. The containment had collapsed. Humanity did not just resist. They thrived. Where other species required centuries to develop new technology, humanity's AI-assisted research divisions compressed innovation into mere decades. Where supply chain restrictions should have strangled them, humanity created self-sustaining industries on the very worlds they had taken from the Kathir. And now, with their new allies, a patchwork of absorbed species, outcasts, and rebels, the United Terran Federation was no longer a mere civilization. It was a force of nature. Entire star systems flipped allegiance overnight, preferring the promise of Terran prosperity over compact stagnation. AI-assisted diplomacy outmaneuvered compact politics, forging treaties before opposition could even react. Human fleets, smaller and more agile than traditional warships, moved through space like predators, always one step ahead. In a single generation, humanity had expanded past the original borders imposed on them. And still they were not satisfied. The galaxy watched in awe. Some saw liberators breaking the chains of stagnant empires. Others saw monsters, an empire that did not conquer by force, but by assimilation. For every species that opposed them, another welcomed them. To the Oskith, whose technological innovations had been crushed under compact bureaucracy, the humans were visionaries. To the Alaran, whose homeworlds had been abandoned by the compact after a devastating war, humanity was a second chance. To the Geranth, who had once ruled through war, humanity was a terrifying mirror of their own past mistakes. And to the compact's ruling elite, humanity had become a nightmare. A force that could not be stopped. For centuries, the compact had relied on control, manipulating power from the shadows. But now, as their strategies collapsed before their eyes, they had only one option left. War. A coalition was formed. One final attempt to break humanity's momentum. The compact gathered the fleets of 100 species, the greatest military force assembled in 1,000 years. Their plan was simple: strike hard, strike fast. Crush humanity before they became unstoppable. They moved in silence. No negotiations, no ultimatums. One moment, humanity was expanding. The next, the full weight of the compact descended upon them. The attack came without warning. The colony world of New Avalon, a shining beacon of Terran expansion, was hit first. 1 minute, it was a bustling trade hub. The next, it was burning. Compact dreadnoughts blotted out the sky, their bombardments turning entire cities to ash. Millions died before the first distress calls could even be answered. It was meant to be a lesson, a message to humanity, a warning that they had gone too far. But the compact had miscalculated. There was no surrender. Within hours, Terran fleets rallied. AI-assisted battle coordination sent response forces faster than any compact species had ever thought possible. What should have been a month-long planetary siege turned into a bloodbath for the compact. The first Terran counterattack was led by Admiral Elias Voss, the man who had once sat at the negotiation table with Kael Vor, the man who had warned the compact not to push humanity too far. Now Voss stood at the helm of the largest human armada ever assembled, and he did not fight like the compact expected. Compact fleets moved in formations perfected over millennia. Terran fleets moved like predators, their ships coordinating with inhuman precision, using combat AI that learned and adapted in real time. The compact had always assumed that their numerical advantage would make them invincible. But humanity did not fight fair. They hacked enemy systems mid-battle. They deployed self-replicating drones that could dismantle enemy warships from within. They used covert cyber warfare to turn compact fleet AI against its own commanders. By the time the first battle was over, a third of the compact fleet had been obliterated, and humanity had not lost a single world. The compact should have surrendered. Instead, they doubled down. More fleets. More armies. More worlds set ablaze in a desperate attempt to break humanity's momentum. But the more they fought, the more it became obvious. They were losing. Every battle pushed them further back. Every lost world became another world that swore allegiance to humanity. Every failure made humanity stronger. And soon, the compact faced an even greater horror, because humanity had not only adapted, they had begun innovating beyond compact understanding. The compact had always assumed technology followed a predictable trajectory. What they never accounted for was what would happen when humanity broke free from the limits of organic warfare. The first post-human combat units emerged on the front lines of the battle for Threxian Prime, AI-enhanced soldiers, faster and stronger than any biological entity. Neural-linked command networks that allowed entire fleets to act as a singular intelligence. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics, shifting space-time itself in localized bursts of destruction. For The first time in history the Compact was fighting something it could not understand. And it terrified them. Within a decade, half the galaxy belonged to humanity. Entire civilizations willingly joined rather than face annihilation. Once powerful empires crumbled, unable to keep up with Terran technological advancement. And as Admiral Voss stood before the shattered remnants of the Compact Council, he did not demand surrender. He offered them a choice: join humanity, serve under them, or be left behind in the ashes of history. The Compact, after 10,000 years of dominance, had no choice but to kneel. And with that, the war was over. Humanity had won, but deep in the void, beyond the furthest reaches of known space. Something watched, something older than the Compact, something that had seen this cycle before. And as the United Terran Federation stood victorious, one final warning echoed from the darkness. You are not the first. You will not be the last. And, if you do not stop, you will awaken something far worse than us. The Compact was finished, their fleets shattered, their armies broken. The very civilizations that once ruled the stars now stood in submission before humanity. But the war was not over. Because humanity had learned one undeniable truth from their time among the stars: power never goes unchallenged. And in the deepest reaches of space, something had been waiting. Something older than the Compact. Something that had seen this cycle before. And now, it had taken notice of humanity. The Compact Council gathered for the final time. Gone were the days of arrogance, of condescension toward the upstart species that had once begged for a place in their galactic order. Now they sat in the ruins of their own empire, pleading for survival. Admiral Elias Voss stood before them, flanked by the commanders of the United Terran Federation. Join us, he declared, or be left behind. Some resisted, too proud to kneel. They were given no second warning. Within days their territories fell, their fleets abandoned them, their own people turned against them, choosing the promise of Terran prosperity over the dying embers of a lost empire. In less than a year, the Compact ceased to exist, and humanity stood unchallenged. Then came the silence. For centuries, the Compact had spoken of the outer darkness, regions of space that even their most ancient starships refused to enter. Dead systems, planets where no life had ever evolved, regions where entire civilizations had once thrived, only to vanish without a trace. Humanity had dismissed these legends, but now their deep space probes were returning, empty. Entire fleets sent beyond known space disappeared without a signal. Something was watching them. Something had been waiting for them to reach this moment. Dr. Sahana Patel was among the first to decipher the messages buried in the ancient Compact archives, warnings left behind by civilizations long gone. They all followed the same path, she whispered, scrolling through data thousands of years old. They all had the same rise, the same expansion, the same unquestioned dominance over the galaxy, and then they vanished. No war, no recorded enemy, just emptiness. As she ran the final projections, a cold realization settled over her. Humanity had grown too fast, too strong, too loud, and something had heard them. The first distress call came from Outpost Epsilon 9, a military research station near the galactic rim. No visuals, no descriptions of an enemy. Just a single panicked transmission before silence. They're already here. When the Terran fleet arrived, they found nothing. No wreckage. No bodies. Just a ghost station, abandoned as if the personnel had simply ceased to exist. It was only after analyzing the station logs that they found the last recorded transmission, a signal, not of human or compact origin. Something speaking, to them in their own language. Do you see now? You are not the first. You will not be the last. They came without warning. Not ships, not fleets, something else. Space itself twisted as Terran warships encountered forces beyond their understanding. Shadows that moved without form. Gravity wells that ripped entire ships apart without a single shot fired. The first engagement was a slaughter. Terran AI-assisted combat systems could not predict enemy movement. Weapons passed through their forms as if they weren't even there. And then, the losses stopped. Because humanity, as they had done 1,000 times before, adapted. They had fought wars in ways no species had ever dared to fight before. And now, they did the impossible. They found a way to strike back. The answer came from an unexpected place: quantum resonance weaponry. Experimental technology once deemed impractical. But now, it was humanity's only hope. Instead of firing at the enemy, they fired at the very fabric of space around them. Localized dimensional shifts disrupted the enemy's forms, forcing them into a state where they could be destroyed. The first Terran fleet to survive an engagement did so by collapsing an entire region of space-time around their attackers, trapping them, destroying them in a way no species had ever managed before. It was the first true victory against the unseen, and it was only the beginning. Admiral Voss stood before the Galactic Council, now composed not just of humanity, but of every species that had once opposed them. "We thought we had won," he admitted, his voice grim. "We thought we had conquered the galaxy. But now we understand the truth. We were never alone. And we were never the strongest." The galaxy, once divided, now stood together, united under one banner. Not for conquest, not for power, but for survival. Because now, the true enemy had arrived. And for the first time in history, humanity was no longer the dominant force in the
galaxy. They were the hunted. The war against the unseen had begun. For the first time since humanity had emerged onto the galactic stage,
they were no longer the superior force. They had conquered empires. They had rewritten the order of the galaxy. They had adapted to every challenge, crushed every enemy, outmaneuvered every species that had ever dared to stand against them. But this was something else. Something beyond war, beyond strategy, beyond weapons, beyond even their understanding of reality itself. And now, humanity stood at the edge of extinction. Entire fleets vanished in the silent abyss. Worlds, once thriving under Terran rule, were now ghost planets, stripped of life with no trace of an enemy presence. Their weapons, no matter how advanced, could not always touch the unseen. Their defenses, no matter how fortified, were bypassed as if they did not exist. It was a war of attrition, and for the first time in centuries, humanity was losing. The greatest minds of the Federation, scientists and tacticians alike, gathered in secret, searching for an answer, any answer. Dr. Sahana Patel stood at the center of them all, her face gaunt, her voice steady. "The compact was right about one thing," she said. "We are not the first." A chilling silence filled the room. "We are only the latest species to reach this point, the latest to rise too high, to burn too bright." Admiral Voss clenched his fists. "Then tell us how to stop it," she hesitated. "There may be a way." Every civilization before them had disappeared without a trace. But what if some of them had found another way? What if they had escaped? Deep within the ruins of a long-dead world, lost among the silent wreckage of a civilization that had once ruled half the galaxy, humanity found something they were never meant to see. Not a weapon, not a fleet, a warning. Etched in a language older than the compact itself, a message awaited them. One final testament left behind by those who had once stood where humanity now stood. You cannot win. You can only choose. To fight and be erased, or to flee and become something new. Voss read the words in silence, his expression unreadable. Then he made his decision. The Federation was split. Half believed humanity should fight until the last soldier fell, until the last ship burned, until the last breath was drawn. The other half believed they should leave, not surrender, not retreat, but to evolve beyond the war itself. Dr. Patel's research had uncovered a hidden truth, an ancient project lost in the depths of time, a way to move beyond physical existence, to become something that even the unseen could not touch. A choice had to be made. One path led to the end of everything. The other led to something unknown. And so, for the first time in human history, they split. Half of humanity, the warriors, the defiant, the unyielding, chose to stay, to fight, to burn the heavens if they had to, and the other half, the visionaries, the dreamers, the ones who saw beyond war, chose to leave, to ascend. A fleet unlike any before it was constructed, not for battle, but for departure. A migration into the unknown, into a realm beyond flesh, beyond time, beyond war. And as the unseen closed in, on the last of humanity's strongholds as the final battle erupted across the stars, the great Exodus fleet departed from reality itself. And then, the war ended. For those who remained, there was no victory, but there was defiance. The last soldiers of humanity stood until the final moment, fighting until their ships were dust, until their weapons fell silent. And when the unseen came for them, they did not beg. They did not run. They stood as humanity always had, unbroken until the very last breath. And then, they were gone. But the Exodus fleet? They had found something else. Something beyond the stars. Something greater than war, greater than the unseen, greater than the galaxy itself. And in the darkness of deep space, where no war could reach them, where no enemy could touch them, humanity was reborn. Across the ruins of the compact, across the shattered remnants of once great empires, the legend of humanity would never fade. The species that had risen too fast, the species that had burned too bright, the species that had changed everything, and, in the silence of the cosmos, the unseen finally spoke one last time. They were different. They did not fall as the others did. Perhaps we should be afraid. And somewhere in the void, humanity watched, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something else, something more. And for the first time, the unseen felt fear, because humanity had not been erased. They had become something greater, and one day, they would return. The war was over. But the galaxy was forever changed. The compact no longer existed. The unseen had withdrawn into the void. And humanity? Humanity was gone, or so the galaxy believed. Across the ruins of the old galactic order, species that had once been ruled by humanity searched for meaning in the empty space they had left behind. No Terran fleets patrolled the stars. No Terran colonies remained to be found. Even the worlds they had once called home now stood abandoned, silent, untouched. Some called it the Great Vanishing. Others whispered of something more. The last war had not ended in fire. It had ended in departure. But departure to where? On a desolate moon at the edge of known space, Kyle Vor, once a proud senator of the Compact, stood alone before the remains of a Terran outpost. He had survived where others had fallen. He had seen what the unseen could do. He had felt the terror of watching entire fleets disappear without a trace. And now he stood before the final transmission humanity had ever sent. It was not a warning, not a plea, not a threat. It was a promise. We are not lost. We have not fallen. We have simply stepped beyond what you can understand. One day we may return. And when we do, we will see what you have made of the world we left behind. Vor trembled as he read the words. Because he knew. This was not an empty statement. Humanity had never accepted defeat, and wherever they had gone, whatever they had become, they were still watching. Deep in the abyss of uncharted space where no sensors could reach, where no star shone bright enough to illuminate the darkness, something moved. A ripple in the void. A shift in the fabric of space-time itself. Something new. Something ancient. And if one listened closely, across the echoes of lost transmissions, through the remnants of forgotten battles, they would hear a single message. A voice, human and not human. A whisper, carried on the winds of the void. We are not gone. We have simply evolved. And when the time is right, we will return. And for the first time in recorded history, The galaxy felt something it had never known before. A future without humanity, and a future where, one day, humanity would come back to claim what was theirs. The cycle was not over, it had only just begun.